All right, thank you. So around the two questions, possible new ideas you have on generating assessment or new thoughts on selected response. What were some of the things that came up as you were discussing? We'll just take, let's have 3 people. If I could have 3 people, just kind of let me know and then we'll come around to you. Who's got something to share from that conversation? Okay, there's 1. 2 more? Okay, there's 2. Just 1 more. What came out from what we were just talking through? Okay, all right, go ahead.
It seems that it might take, at first, it might take a lot longer to generate an assessment, looking at every question for depth of knowledge. And I mean, you're going to put a lot more thought yourself into each question. And then maybe, you know, when you have your learning target or your outcomes, make the test first and then kind of work backwards to, as far as creating a unit, let's say, to match that assessment.
Okay.
It's maybe a different way of thinking, but also I just think time-wise, at first it's going to take a lot longer, but then as you get used to writing tests that way, then...
Okay. So time consideration.
Yeah, just to organize that thought process in your mind of how you're going to make that assessment.
Right. So also talking a little bit about maybe restructuring your thinking around how you're putting the assessment together. And maybe it's not restructuring it, but just maybe going deeper into it. Something along that. Okay. Yeah.
So we talked about how the verbs from the standards can really help you match up what kind of learning target they're looking for.
Okay.
So that can help you with what stems and stuff that you use in order to assess that type of knowledge.
Okay. So maybe the verbs are triggering different places where assessment will occur within a standard. Okay. And then, and then what type of question that might look like? Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah.
I think when you're making these questions or redoing these questions, you have the struggle with making it harder versus making it more complex.
Okay.
When trying to redo these questions, after a while I started to say, am I making this more complex, more depth of knowledge, or am I really just making it harder for the student?
Right. So back to that difficulty versus complexity that we talked about from last time. And that is a difficult piece to really grab onto, especially when you start applying it to something existing and making that revision. You have to really check, is this more difficult or is this more complex? And back to the learning target piece that Laura introduced, which is most appropriate? Is there a place for a difficult, or does it have to go more complex? Right? Because that's the learning target's going to somewhat define what that looks like as well. Good. All right. So what we're going to do then is give you a chance to kind of see the work that you did in between. So you have a selected response item. It's either revised or something you generated. If you would just quickly get into, and you kind of already are, but just confirm your groups of 2 or 3. And as you're kind of finalizing that, in order to have these conversations around these revision or revised statements or questions that you generated, we're going to kind of go through a review process, if you will. So we have given you a protocol with some guiding questions to consider. So in your group of 2 or 3, you are going to, all of you are going to get the handout, but in your group of 2 or 3, simply examine this protocol document, read through the questions that are on it. Allison and Laura are bringing it around, but read through the questions on it and dig a little deeper into it. And then I'll give you about 3 minutes as a team to dig into that. And then if there are questions of clarification or things you need to know more about, think of this as a lens for which we're going to kind of review the items that we've generated. Because we're going to pass our items around and get constructive feedback. And so here's some guiding questions for that process. So just get to know these. All right? Any questions you have around the handout and what you're going to be doing? All right. Let's do 3 minutes. Go ahead.